Many drivers believe that pumping up their tires is just a basic, risk-free task they can do quickly at any gas station. But what if I told you that a very common habit, something millions of people in the United States do regularly, is silently setting the stage for catastrophic tire blowouts, sudden loss of vehicle control, terrifying rollovers, and even expensive damage to suspension components? The shocking truth is that the vast majority of everyday drivers unknowingly commit this exact error every time they add air. Tire technicians witness the aftermath almost daily. Safety experts and professional mechanics issue warnings about it year after year. Yet the mistake continues, because very few people truly grasp the physics of what occurs deep inside a tire the instant air is forced in under the wrong conditions. By the time you finish reading this, you'll clearly understand one critical action you must never take when filling your tires. An error that quietly damages the internal steel reinforcement, destroys high-speed safety margins, and transforms a tire that appears completely normal into a hidden disaster waiting to explode. Before we dive deeper, if you value straightforward, mechanic-backed advice that actually keeps you safer on the road and saves you money in the long run, consider following Car Care Garage. We focus on practical knowledge that protects both your vehicle and everyone inside it. A tiny oversight can mean the difference between a reliable ride and a life-changing incident. Now let's uncover the real science of tire pressure that almost no one discusses openly. Point 1. The invisible threat. Almost every driver overlooks. Everyone has heard that tires need the right pressure, but very few understand the internal drama that unfolds when that pressure drifts even slightly off target. This knowledge gap is exactly why tread peel-offs, sudden blowouts, and high-speed crashes happen far too often without any obvious external cause like debris or sharp objects. The trouble doesn't announce itself with noise or vibration at first. It builds quietly over weeks or months. Tire pressure isn't simply a number on a gauge. It dictates how the entire tire behaves, how much it bends with every rotation, how intensely heat accumulates, how the critical steel belts carry load, and how effectively the tread grips the pavement. When pressure is too low, the tire sidewall and tread area flex dramatically with each revolution. That repeated bending produces friction heat that cooks the rubber from the inside, breaks down chemical bonds between layers, and eventually fatigues the steel belts that keep the tread securely attached. Conversely, too much pressure makes the tire excessively stiff. The footprint shrinks dramatically, concentrating wear in the center while the sidewalls lose flexibility and become prone to sudden cracking or rupture from even minor road impacts. In either scenario, the damage begins long before you notice bulges, cracks, or uneven wear. Internal fatigue accumulates silently, and this hidden deterioration causes far more catastrophic failures than most external hazards combined. The root cause? Believing that close enough is ever acceptable. Point 2. Why every pressure reading after driving is basically lying to you. Here's a fact most American drivers never learn in driver US education or at the tire shop. The second your vehicle moves, even for a 10-minute errand, the number on your gauge stops being trustworthy. Rolling resistance, pavement heat, acceleration, braking, cornering forces, and even direct sunlight rapidly warm the air sealed inside the tire. That temperature spike causes the air to expand, artificially raising the pressure reading by 5 to 10 PSI or more in a short time. So when you pull up to the air pump right after driving and see, say, 28 PSI, your brain thinks, low tire, better add some air. But in reality, that tire might already be sitting at the correct cold pressure of 35-36 PSI or higher. By adding air to that warm, expanded tire, you're unknowingly overfilling it. Once the vehicle sits and cools for several hours, the air contracts again, but now there's too much of it inside. The final cold pressure climbs dangerously high, sometimes 6 to 10 PSI above the vehicle manufacturer's recommendation. What felt like a helpful correction has quietly turned your tires into rigid, overstressed components with reduced grip, harsher ride quality, poor impact absorption, and dramatically elevated risk of high-speed failure. Point 3. The unbreakable cold-only principle that professionals live by. There is one golden rule accepted by every tire engineer, every major car manufacturer and every reputable service center. Check and adjust tire pressure exclusively when tires are cold. Cold means the vehicle has been parked for a minimum of 3 hours, ideally overnight, giving the internal air temperature time to stabilize with the surrounding environment. Only in this state does the gauge show the true baseline pressure that designers used when they engineered the tire and suspension system. Every service manual, every TPMS calibration procedure, and every formal mechanic training program repeats the same message: never trust or adjust pressure on a warm or hot tire. Ignoring this rule is the number one reason people accidentally overinflate. They see an artificially low reading on a hot tire, pump in extra air to fix it, and then drive away blissfully unaware that hours later the pressure will settle far above safe levels. Following the cold tire rule alone eliminates most accidental overinflation and sharply cuts the odds of heat-induced structural breakdown, belt fatigue, and violent tread separation. Point 4. The surprising reality: overinflated tires are actually more widespread than underinflated ones. While most people fear running too low on air, and rightly so, the bigger everyday danger in the real world is overinflation, and it happens far more frequently than most realize. It rarely occurs because someone deliberately pumps in too much air. Instead, it's almost always caused by one of two things: checking, adding air immediately after driving, or relying on inaccurate coin-operated gas station compressors that deliver inconsistent pressure. Picture this common scenario. A driver returns from a 20-minute highway trip, sees a low reading caused by heat expansion, and adds 4-5 PSI to be safe. After the car cools overnight, that same tire now sits 6-8 PSI above the placard recommendation. The tire looks fine, feels firm, but internally it has become dangerously rigid. Overinflated tires reduce the contact patch, robbing traction, especially in rain or during emergency maneuvers. Sidewalls stiffen and transmit more shock directly to the wheel and suspension. The steel belts endure unnatural stretching forces they weren't meant to handle continuously. Even minor road imperfections become magnified, accelerating hidden damage that eventually leads to sudden, explosive failure. Point 5. The terrifying internal chain reaction inside an overinflated tire. From the outside, an overinflated tire often appears healthy, round, firm, no obvious bulges. But inside, a destructive cascade quietly begins the moment pressure exceeds design limits. First, the tread footprint narrows dramatically. Less rubber touches the road, so the same vehicle weight and cornering forces concentrate heat into a smaller zone. Excessive localized heat rapidly dries and embrittles the rubber compounds, weakens adhesives between layers, and stresses every internal component. Second, the steel belts, thin, high-strength wires designed to sit comfortably within precise tension ranges, now experience constant overtension. Tiny separations start forming between the steel cords and the surrounding rubber matrix. These micro-tears are invisible from the outside, yet they allow air pockets to form and grow. Over weeks or months, these weakened zones expand. Air migrates into the separations, creating blisters or bubbles in the tread or sidewall. At highway speeds, the combination of centrifugal force, accumulated heat, vehicle load, and sustained high pressure pushes the compromised tire past its breaking point. When failure finally arrives, it is instant and violent. A separated belt or tread block rips away in milliseconds, instantly robbing the vehicle of grip and stability. The result is often a violent yaw, rollover, or head-on collision, all traceable back to those few extra PSI added on a hot afternoon at a gas station. Point 6. Neglecting the valve core and leaving the cap off. Hidden inside every tire valve stem is a tiny but crucial component: the valve core. This spring-loaded pin is the only thing actively sealing the high-pressure air inside your tire. If it becomes loose, contaminated with dirt, or lightly corroded, it allows air to seep out slowly, sometimes so gradually that you never suspect a leak. Even more overlooked is the little plastic, or metal, valve cap. It isn't decorative. Its real job is to keep dust, moisture, road salt, brake dust, and tiny road grit away from the valve core. When that protection is missing for weeks or months, contaminants settle in, corrode the internal metal parts, and ruin the seal. Days or weeks later, you suddenly notice one tire consistently lower than the others, with no nail or puncture in sight. Continental's engineering data indicates that roughly 12% of otherwise unexplained pressure losses trace back to faulty or compromised valve cores. Professional tire shops treat this as non-negotiable routine. Every time you add air, visually inspect the valve stem. Use a valve core tool, costs just a couple of dollars, to check that the core is snug. Always replace the cap immediately, and whenever possible, choose metal caps or high-quality caps with built-in rubber seals. It takes 5 extra seconds and prevents one of the most common mystery slow leaks on the road today. Point 7. Spraying tire shine or dressing on warm tires immediately after inflation. It feels satisfying to finish inflating and then make the sidewalls glossy with tire dressing. Looks great in the driveway, right? Unfortunately, this very common sequence is silently harming the rubber. Most popular inexpensive tire shine products contain petroleum distillates or heavy silicone oils. When those chemicals touch a warm tire, which is exactly what you have right after driving to the gas station or after pumping air, the heat accelerates a drying reaction inside the rubber compound. Over repeated applications, the sidewalls lose flexibility, develop hairline surface cracks, and gradually become brittle. Those microcracks eventually grow into serious structural weaknesses that can lead to sidewall failure or blowouts under load and speed. Reputable detailing professionals and premium tire care brands give very clear guidance. Apply any tire dressing or protectant only when the tires are completely cold, ideally several hours after driving or inflation. Choose water-based formulas that include UV inhibitors instead of solvent-heavy or pure silicone products. Appearance and long-term tire health do not have to be enemies, but applying shine to hot rubber is one of the fastest ways to turn them into opponents. Point 8. Failing to account for temperature swings and elevation changes. Tire pressure is surprisingly sensitive to the environment. A widely accepted rule of thumb from tire engineers is that pressure changes. Roughly 1 PSI for every 10 degree amps, 5-6 degrees C change in ambient temperature. So if you carefully set your tires to the recommended cold pressure on a warm summer afternoon of 85 degrees, then overnight the temperature drops to 50 degrees, you can easily lose 3 to 4 PSI purely from cooling, no leak required. The effect becomes even more pronounced during elevation changes. As you drive into mountainous areas, atmospheric pressure decreases. That makes the gauge reading inside the tire appear higher than it actually is, relative to the outside air. A tire that was perfectly calibrated at sea level may show as overinflated at 5,000 feet. If you then descend hundreds or thousands of feet without rechecking, the tire ends up carrying too much real pressure once you're back at lower altitude. Goodyear and other major manufacturers advise drivers to, whenever possible, check and adjust pressure in temperature and altitude conditions similar to where you normally drive. On long trips that cross significant elevation or experience large day-to-night temperature swings, re-verify cold pressure at your destination. Tires are living components that breathe with the weather and the landscape, ignoring that reality invites uneven wear and hidden stress. Point 9. Driving away without recalibrating the TPMS after inflation. Almost every vehicle manufactured in the last 15 to 20 years has a tire pressure monitoring system, TPMS. It's a valuable early warning tool, but it only works correctly if you give it the right starting point. A surprisingly large number of drivers inflate all 4 tires, close the hood, and drive off without resetting or relearning the system. The TPMS continues to reference the old baseline pressures. Later, when a tire genuinely loses air, the warning light may come on much later than it should, or not at all until the pressure is critically low. Safety reports show that a meaningful percentage of TPMS-related incidents involve vehicles that had recent tire service or inflation, but no system reset. The fix is straightforward and usually takes under 5 minutes. After inflating, turn the ignition to the on position, engine off. Locate the TPMS reset, relearn, or calibration menu in your vehicle's infotainment screen or instrument cluster. Follow the on-screen instructions. Drive at a steady speed, usually above 25-30 mph, for several minutes, so the sensors can register and memorize the new pressures. One quick reset keeps your TPMS trustworthy and ensures you get the warning when you actually need it. Point 10. Completely forgetting to check and maintain the spare tire. It happens all the time. 4 main tires get regular attention, but the spare sits untouched for months or years. Roadside assistance crews report that a surprisingly high percentage of "I have a flat tire" calls end, with the discovery that the spare is also flat or dangerously underinflated. Like every tire, the spare naturally loses about 1 PSI per month simply from normal permeation through the rubber. After a year or two of neglect, it's common to find it 10 to 15 PSI below safe levels or completely flat. In an emergency, that means you're either stranded longer or, worse, attempting to drive on an unsafe spare. Temporary donut spares are especially critical. They typically require 60 PSI, sometimes more, far higher than normal tires. The exact number is printed on the spare itself or listed in the owner's manual. Make it a habit. Every time you check or inflate the 4 main tires, pull out the spare, or at least check its pressure through the access hole, and verify it's ready if you ever need it. A few minutes now can prevent hours of frustration later. Point 11. Inflating all 4 tires to exactly the same pressure. It seems logical to set every tire to the same number, but on many vehicles, that decision actually throws off the entire chassis balance. Because of weight distribution, most cars, SUVs, crossovers, and pickup trucks carry noticeably more load over the front axle. That extra weight, combined with steering forces and most of the braking load, means the front tires usually need several PSI more than the rears. The door jamb placard might read, for example, 36 front, 33 rear, or even larger differences on trucks and heavy SUVs. When you ignore those differences and run uniform pressure, handling balance shifts, often toward understeer, tire wear becomes uneven. Braking distances increase, especially on wet surfaces. Stability control systems and ABS calibration are fighting an incorrect setup. Those front-rear numbers are not optional suggestions. They are carefully calculated to match suspension geometry, weight distribution, and electronic safety systems. Always consult the vehicle placard or owner's manual and set each axle accordingly. Point 12. Blasting air in too quickly when the tire is very low. High-volume gas station compressors can deliver well over 100 PSI in a matter of seconds. When a nearly flat or completely empty tire receives that sudden surge, several harmful things happen inside the tire that you cannot see. The valve core and seal experience a sharp temperature spike from friction. The bead area, where the tire meets the rim, endures abrupt, uneven stress. Micro tears can form in the inner liner and lower sidewall layers. None of these injuries are visible from the outside, yet they permanently weaken the tire's structure and shorten its safe lifespan. Professional race teams, aviation tire shops, and high-end service centers almost always use slow-fill regulators precisely to avoid this hidden damage. Impractical guideline. If a very low tire goes from empty to full in under 15 seconds, the air entered too aggressively. Whenever possible, inflate slowly and steadily. Your tires will reward you with longer life and greater reliability. These 12 points may seem like small details, but together they represent some of the most frequent ways drivers unintentionally sabotage their own tires. Fix them one at a time, and you'll notice better consistency, longer tread life, sharper handling, and significantly greater peace of mind every time you get behind the wheel. Safe travels.